Good morning, good morning, good morning. Just dropped out for a moment. I wonder how many of my live videos actually start with this. Like not being able to see my face and just seeing the bottom of my mug as I have a sip of my tea. Oh, I do ponder these things. So I've had some really cool, deep kind of stuff drop in for me over the last couple of days. And I always love it because, I love jumping live on Mondays for my Monday musings and having a yarn about some kind of things that have been on my mind. So good morning to everybody who has joined. I've been pondering about this inner conflict because how many of you, and if you're here and you're listening, I'd love to know, do you feel like you have an inner conflict? That very often there is like this battle that goes on between you and, well, you. There's this battle that happens internally. Who has that experience? Even a thumbs up or a heart or whatever. Let me know if you have that experience of that inner battle. I hope that wind's okay for you guys. It's not too blowy. It's like we fight against ourselves pretty regularly. There's always this inner battle and there's arguments. I mean, I've had arguments with like 4 different versions of myself at the same time. Have you ever had something like this whereby you're like, someone's like inside of me, it's like, no, you don't want to do that. And the other part's like, well, what if I do want to do that? Well, and then a third voice comes in and goes, shut up. You're like, now, thanks, Will. Yeah, beautiful to have you here. It's such an interesting thing because once upon a time we were told that if you hear voices or you talk to yourself, you're crazy. I actually think the opposite is true. Well, not even true. I just think that that pretty well all of us hear voices in our heads, and talking to ourselves is a really great way to be able to expand ourselves. Hey, Lara, nice to have you here, doll. Happy birthday for the other day. It's a really interesting thing because we do have this inner battle, and more lately I've been thinking about, self-love. And I talk about, obviously, self-love. That's my jam. That's what I help people do. I help people fall in love with themselves because I hated myself for a really long time and now I don't. And it occurred to me the other day that there's a really strong link between self-love and inner peace. And our inner peace might sound really like enlightenment or spiritual, which, to a large degree that it is. But think about it. When you love yourself and when you come into connection with yourself, the inner battle dissipates. That's what happens, actually. I'm sure that if you haven't come to a place of self-love yet, you may not have experienced this. But what happens when you love yourself, when you come into a beautiful alignment of connection with yourself, then that inner fight that you had before doesn't exist anymore. Everything kind of just starts to calm down. Because that little voice inside of our head, which I like to call the ego, the small self, the mind, the voices. What else do I call the little small self? Normally just the ego is what I call our mind. The ego gets a pretty bad rap. Get rid of your ego. Nobody wants your ego here. And people try to hate their ego. And even in spiritual circles, they talk about getting rid of your ego and killing your ego and ego death. But the truth is that your ego is just the most immature part of your soul. So if you try to kill off your ego, you're literally trying to kill off a part of you. And how useful is that? Not very. And that just is causing more war within yourself. Do you see this paradigm? If there is a part of you that you are trying to kill off, that you are trying to get rid of, that you are disgusted by, that you hate, that you feel ashamed about, then that's just more conflict. It sounds really counterintuitive, but we must learn to love the parts of us that we hate. We must learn to find peace with the parts of us that we don't like very much. And hey, shit, we all have them. Like, who here's not, there's parts of me that I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I do that. Or I might be ashamed about that kind of part of myself. We all have parts of ourselves that we're not particularly proud of. That's just part of the thing, isn't it, Vula? Yeah, it's just, we all have these parts of ourselves. But the more that we try to deny, ignore, push aside, and get rid of those parts, the more conflict we are causing within ourselves. And then let me go a little bit like widescreen for you here for the moment, because like what happens then if every single one of us is cruising around with a battle going on internally? If we have conflict internally, how on earth can our outside world, the rest of our planet, our interaction with other humans possibly be at peace? It's impossible. We cannot get to a place where we have external peace in the world until we have internal peace. Because we don't know how to do it. If you can't even be best friends with a person that you spend the most amount of time with, how the hell do you think that you can come to a place of acceptance and true love with somebody outside of yourself? With a stranger, somebody who has varying beliefs. There are all parts of us that we don't like. And just like there are people outside of us that we don't like. If we were to go along the premise that we are all one and that we are all connected, then the only way for us to create some kind of lasting peace on the planet is to come to inner peace. And the way that we come to inner peace is by self-love. Self-love is the path to inner peace. Because inner peace suggests that there's peace inside. There's no more battle. There's no more conflict. There's no more war. And isn't that love? Isn't self-love the idea that there's no more conflict in between us? There's no more conflict that we have to face every day in our life. Sure, there might be conflict of, like, I need to get up and go to work today. Well, I really want to stay in bed. There's that level of conflict. But more so than anything, what the conflict that I'm talking about is between, like, your head and your heart. How often do we find that the battle is like we're having an argument with ourselves, that we don't like parts of ourselves, that we're telling ourselves to shut up, we're telling ourselves to go away, we're ignoring ourselves and being cruel to ourselves? That happens a lot. So it's so super important that we come to a point whereby we work on creating more peace within inside of ourselves. If you hear that little voice in your head that you don't like, that part of you that feels shame, the part of you that you don't like, the part of you that you feel like I don't want anyone to ever know that, then I suggest this to you. Start talking to yourself more. Yeah, literally. I do this all the time. If I get a little voice in my head that feels like it's being self-destructive, I will talk to that voice and say, hello. It could be shame. I will label it in some description. Hello, little voice. Hello, shame. Hello, ego. I can hear you. Thank you for your contribution. And then I might go, I choose love. I choose love instead of the fear that's happening inside of me. Because when our ego, when our mind's the one in charge, we will always be at war. Because it's up here, our mind is pre-programmed to look for problems. That's how we stay alive. That's how we have survival. But if we come to a point, oh my God, my psych's Asia's. I don't know what you mean, Vula, but tell me more. When we come to a place where it's our soul that's driving this human body, this ship that we have, then there's far more peace, because the ego up here was never meant to be in charge the way in which it is. Oh, your psyche says the same thing. There you go. We need to make peace with the parts of ourselves. Absolutely make peace with them by being the tender and nurturing kind of best friend. If you were your own child and you were having voices when you were saying to yourself mean things, would you say to your child, fuck off, kid, be quiet, go away, get to your room, when it's being mean to itself? Or would you give it love? Would you give it tenderness? You cannot dispel hate with hate. The only thing that dispels hate is love. So we need to learn to love the parts of us that we hate and learn to love the parts of us that hate us. This is the way that we find peace within ourselves, to love the parts of us that we don't want to. You don't have to like those parts necessarily. You don't have to agree with them. You don't have to appreciate their behaviors, but loving them and giving them love and the attention that they need, not so they can drive the bus, not by any stretch. It's kind of like your emotions. You don't want them in the boot. They're kind of like a kid. You don't want them in the boot, but you don't want them driving the car. Have the mind and the thoughts in the back seat, strapped in nice and safely. You bring them along with you for the journey, but you, your soul, your higher self, is the one that remains in charge. This is the key to self-love, the key to inner peace. And you know what? I'm just going to say it. I really do think that the key to world peace, for us to stop the madness that happens in this world where we kill and hurt each other, is that we need to stop trying to kill and hurt ourselves. if we stop trying to kill and hurt ourselves and we become to inner peace in here, we no longer seek conflict externally. We no longer need it because we're in harmony. We're in harmony with ourselves, we're in harmony with the world, we're in harmony with the one that is all, that is us. It's my little Monday musings. Thank you so much for joining me. I love these chats and I love this space. I'm actually probably in about a week's time, I'm releasing a new ebook, which is exciting. It's called the 6 Elements of Self-Love Awakening. And I've just run a course on about it, and the ebook's about to be released. It's free, so just keep a lookout. I look forward to be able to share that with you guys once it's all formatted and that kind of jazz. And yeah, share more of the jam. Anywho, big love to you. Have yourself an absolutely beautiful week. You are so welcome, Vula. It's a pleasure to give some good soul nutrition this morning. I hope you enjoy the feast. Love you guys. See ya.